Is Mexico a real country anymore? By which I mean, does the elected government control the country, which is what a government's supposed to do? Well, not really. Outside of the Mexico City area, politics are mostly in the hands of local bosses who are directly answerable to the infamous names we've all heard. And the steadily increasing body count is having very direct effects on the economy of America's second largest trading partner. That's right, Mexico isn't just some little country south of the border that supplies us with tequila and narcos. With nearly $700 billion in trade yearly before the pandemic, Mexico is second only to China as our economic partner, and Mexican billionaire Carlos Slim has been the on and off richest man in the world for most of the 2000s. Now, I was just reading an econometric analysis of the impact of violence in our southern neighbor. Here's why I love economics. I have a master's degree, for those unaware. This is a really good statistic. So they looked at, as homicide rates increased in certain regions in Mexico, how much energy was used in the region. Gasoline, coal, as a proxy for economic activity. Because, government can sort of fudge numbers to make it to GDP seem how they want it to be. But where homicide goes up, fuel usage goes down, which is indicative of shrinking economy. So as the country or certain regions get more violent, the economy contracts, and a contracting economy is what leads to revolution. Do we inherit the sins of our father? Well, down in cartel land, El Chapo's sons have certainly inherited the power of their father, the fruit of his sins, so to speak. Los Chapitos are what El Chapo's sons and their followers are called, and while we've all heard of the push of the Jalisco new generation to take the #1 spot from the Sinaloa Federation, do you know what's going on internally with Team Sinaloa? Los Chapitos, or at least some of their followers, are fighting with El Mayo Zambada Garcia, El Chapo's one-time equal at the top of the Sinaloa food chain, and there's a simmering civil war in Sinaloa. Now, if you didn't watch my Trials of El Chapo series, there's something else you might not know. El Mayo's son, Ismael Vicentillo Zambada, actually testified against El Chapo in exchange for a 15-year term. More on him later. But his testimony was certainly not the only reason El Chapo went down, but he was definitely a pillar of the case, seeing as that he had been the logistics chief for much of Sinaloa operations, overseeing the actual movement of product into America. Now, El Mayo has a few sons, and collectively they're known as the Mayitos, the little Mayos. And just like El Chapo's sons, they were all knee-deep in the game. Just this past April 30th, Ismael Zambada Imperial, alias Mayito Gordo, pled guilty to importing different substances from Mexico into the U.S. In the Federal District of Southern California. And as the son of Sinaloa Cartel kingpin Ismael Zambada Garcia, he was operating out of Mexico, sending stuff into San Diego. They caught him in Culiacan in 2014 after authorities were watching him on social media. He was one of the first narco kids to make lavish displays of wealth using Twitter to flex. Mayito Gordo's arrest and subsequent conviction came as part of an investigation that began in 2011 on Sinaloa moving stuff into National City in Chula Vista, which is just on the other side of the San Diego border. According to the feds, the case resulted in charges against 125 people and has had a significant impact in the worldwide operations of the Sinaloa Cartel. The word from south of the border is that Mayito Gordo was not really that much of a part of the Sinaloa infrastructure and was sort of doing his own thing, but who knows. Now, it was once speculated that El Mayo's sons, Los Mayitos, could take over the reins of the group, but they haven't shown the same cohesion as El Chapo's sons. But number one son, Vicente, the snitch, is finally out of American prison. And again, I'm going to go into him in a minute. But I forgot to mention that El Mayo's brother also testified against El Chapo. Okay? Now, El Mayo's family snitching on El Chapo was likely just to save themselves and not part of a master plan from El Mayo. Or was it? And while the Sinaloa remains under the leadership of El Mayo, its local bosses have broad decision-making power, which makes it difficult to estimate really the true nature of this violence between Chapitos and El Mayo's faction. Is it real, or is it just some jockeying for position at the edges? And what is this violence? Well, about a year ago, 16 pistoleros were killed at one time in a battle between Los Chapitos and El Mayo's people. Tepeque is where it happened. It's a fortified little garrison town about an hour north of Culiacan, capital of Sinaloa, and this is where a lot of the action between these two factions has been happening. Just before the pandemic took hold, two key events happened. One in Tepeque, the other in Culiacan. First, a commando group led by a sicario of Los Chapitos, a guy named El Nini, broke into the Tepeque area, reaching the town of Agua Caliente, and claimed the territory, which generated the first confrontations between the two rival cells.
Para que vean que no hablo nomás por aquí hablar, tengo a la cebache, cuando lo mandaron a hacer su vuelta le salió mal. Para que vean que aquí tiene una oportunidad, aquí escúchenlo.
Now, it's interesting, the guys on the ground are just low-paid thugs and killers with their own interests and identities, and they don't necessarily follow the cartel line. And like I said, it's probable at a high level that Los Chapitos and El Mayo are still allied to some degree. Probably if one set feels they can get an advantage over the other and eliminate the other, they will, but if they have to continue to work together, they will. Now, the next key event also happened in October of 2019, right before the pandemic. It was the infamous catch and release of Ovidio Guzmán, one of El Chapo's sons.
Sal, Ovidio. Salga. Tranquilo, señor. Muéstrame las manos.
He was taken into custody by the Mexican military.
¿Cuánto tienes gente adentro?
No tengo, dos mis hijas.
Diles que paren todo.
And in what had to be a humiliating move for the government, he was let go back into the streets of Culiacan when hundreds of Sinaloa gunmen surrounded them on choke points and made the military give him up. He threatened total war if a video wasn't released. But guess who didn't send any gunmen to help rescue a video? El Mayo. Now back to Tepeque. In December 2019, the state authorities had to order the closure of all the schools in northern Culiacan as they detected groups of armed men riding around in vans and mobilizing in all these places around Tepeque, but there were no reports of any clashes or gun battles. In March of 2020, just as the pandemic was causing a global lockdown, a group of residents of the Tepeque area summoned the media for a press conference, and they told the media they'd formed a self-defense group called the Rural Community Force in preparation for the war that they assumed was coming in their area. That means citizens have to protect themselves there. So the state police and the Mexican army intensified patrols. But then Luis Alberto Moneres, former commander of the municipal police there, was assassinated. And in June of 2020, the head of the public security for the state of Sinaloa reported that in the prior 30 days there had been 9 clashes in the area of Tepeque, and the last one, 16 people were killed in a single day. The victims, who were heavily armed and wearing bulletproof vests, died following a 6-hour shootout on Wednesday near the town of Tepeque, about an hour north of Culiacan, capital of the Sinaloa action. Following the shootout, police seized 40 weapons. Those are very expensive down there. 10 grenades, 24 vehicles, and 36,000 rounds of ammunition. Sinaloa State Security Minister Cristobal Castaneda told reporters that, quote, a van with 7 bodies was located following one gun battle, while 9 bodies were found after a second. Here's a Here's a Twitter video from Los Chapitos Sicarios threatening an El Mayo lieutenant called El Ruso, the Russian.
Vamos a caer, pinche bola de joto, verga, pinche ruso culones, ¿por qué corrieron noche, verga? Ahorita nos vamos a ir a sacar de la pinche carraca, bola de verga. Vamos a la blindada, a la verga. ¡Una recta, Chapo!
Here's a bit of the Russians' handiwork. Obviously, I blurred it, but a man impaled with a Russian flag and left on the side of the road as a message against working for El Chapo's sons in the Tepeque area outside Culiacan. These narco hitmen are now so numerous they have to leave some strange calling card of brutality in order to make a name for themselves and instill fear. It's getting pretty strange down there. The violence is much, seems like to me, more deviant in a way than it was in Colombia back when they were the narco superpower. Here's some local pistoleros walking somewhere. As you can see, most of them are just guys who look like they got handed a gun to go enforce the local boss's order. It's the local boss who's answerable to one of the cartels. And I bet that those low-level gunmen switch sides depending on what's going on. Now, when El Chapo went to prison, the deal was made that El Mayo would take total control while El Chapo's sons learn the business. And apparently, they feel that the learning time is done and they're ready to graduate to management. And this means pushing out some of the lower-level El Mayo loyalists in favor of their own. Violence was probably unavoidable, and more is probably unavoidable. So while Sinaloa fights the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, what do the two sides in a simmering Sinaloa Civil War look like? Well, while Mayo's son's Gordito just got sent away, his most important son, Vicentillo, the one who testified against El Mayo's partner, El Chapo, he's out of prison as of May 2021. At the moment, U.S. authorities haven't given him a real release date, but he's in some sort of halfway house. He's out of jail on the condition that he will not travel to Mexico in the next 5 years, and he can't have any contact with any members of the Sinaloa Cartel. Well, that's like telling, the average guy in the hood he can't be around felons. That's like his whole family is the Sinaloa Cartel. Not a lot more is known about him getting out. The feds gave this interview to Television Univision, the big Spanish language station. But El Mayo's son is no longer in federal jail. And again, he's the one who was the #1 witness against El Chapo Guzmán. But as the firstborn son of El Mayo and a leading figure in the cartel before his arrest, he's also the main heir to one of the most powerful drug trafficking networks in the world, and he may try to claim his place. Born into narco royalty, Vicente Zambada was ordering executions from the age of 22, and at just the age of 16, he survived his first assassination attempt on himself. But what his enemies say about him is that he's a traitor. But is he a traitor? Because if he was never on El Chapo's side, then he's not a traitor. He was going to the DEA, giving him info about El Chapo's location and movements before he got taken into custody. And he was probably taken into custody as part of a plan. And I'm sure El Chapo's sons are against the #1 witness against their father coming back into any sort of power sharing with them in the Sinaloa Federation. Now let's pull back out to the big picture. As the last pre-pandemic year ended, the Mexican president, Andrés Manuel Obrador, took a shot at his preceding president, saying that El Chapo had once wielded the same power as the Mexican president himself. Now, without really displaying much evidence, Obrador took credit for himself for starting to root out corruption. But of course, as the government gets weaker and the gangsters get stronger, what does the word corruption really even mean? Now, a recent disturbing arrest in the Mexican government was that of a guy named Garcia Luna, who was public safety secretary, sort of equivalent to the U.S. Attorney General in the last president, Felipe Calderon's cabinet from 2006 to 2012. And before that post, he led Mexico's equivalent of the FBI, the Federal Investigative Agency, under that prior president, Vicente Fox. And he was recently charged in federal court with 3 counts of trafficking yayo at a high scale. He'd been living in Florida and was arrested in Texas. Now, is that even corruption? I mean, it sounds like the narcos are the government. And now there's Obrador's proposed amnesty policy, which is currently under consideration by the Mexican Senate. It would benefit individuals convicted of theft and minor crimes related to drug trafficking and narcotics possession. The measures are aimed at small-time dealers and users who, because of their social vulnerability, were more likely to get trapped up in drug dealing or their addictions causing them to commit crimes. So the amnesty singles out especially indigenous people, women, and young people as those it seeks to help, especially if they commit crimes under duress or live in extreme poverty. That's pretty vague. Excluded are repeat offenders and those accused of serious crimes such as murder, kidnapping, etc. Another interesting aspect of the amnesty is its incorporation of sedition, which like treason, which Mexican federal law defines as attacking or resisting the public authorities. And this may extend the scope of the amnesty beyond petty users and dealers. Incorporating it into the amnesty suggests that mid-level cartel affiliates not involved in violent acts and corrupt state officials could also get amnesty. And, you know, El Mayo isn't that, I think Obrador said they're not really looking for the big narco traffickers. Like, there doesn't appear to be a big search for El Mayo, for example. So, in the letter of the law, they're giving talking about giving amnesty, and already in the spirit of the law, they're giving amnesty to the big narcos. And Obrador admitted recently that he was the one who personally, though he had denied this before, ordered the release of Ovidio Guzmán when he was captured in Culiacan, that I talked about earlier. And he added that a few days later, Donald Trump offered to help send, troops or money to help crack down on the cartels, but Mexico didn't accept Trump's offer, and the U.S. continues to seek Ovidio Guzmán's arrest and extradition. Now, when Obrador took office, his first full year, 2019, set a record for homicides in Mexico. 2020, it held steady. This year, it's down 2%. I mean, I guess at least it's not going up for now, but... So I guess it couldn't be any worse than it is, and maybe giving up the idea of fighting a war on an entire sector of the economy and society is going to calm things down. We shall see, but then, Mexico will really be an official narco state. So this civil war is simmering in Sinaloa between El Mayo and El Chapo's sons. All the while, the Jalisco new generation is making gains across Mexico and the world. El Chapo's wife, Emma Coronel, who's not the mother of the Chapitos, of course, just turned herself in. She's probably going to take a plea to about a decade in prison. El Mayo's most important son, Vicente, who was also the most important witness against El Chapo in the trial that sent him to prison for life, is out of prison, and the Mexican government, as evinced by the fact they had to turn loose Ovidio Guzmán even after capturing him, is unlikely to put any of these major players into prison soon. It's very complicated, and it doesn't bode well for the stability of our southern neighbor and second largest economic trading partner. This was just a quick update on the narco Game of Thrones south of the border. If you wrote it in a movie script, they'd tell you it was too over the top. Los Drogas Americano. Shout out to the big homie. If you don't know who he is, you shouldn't be watching Al Prophet.